People in America sometimes, or all over the world, can't really connect to Yom HaZikaron. It's those people living in Israel, those Israelis. But I was just like you. I go to Starbucks and shop at the Gap, and my family made Aliyah, and this became our life, and we're all the same. This is Israel, and this is unfortunately part of what it is to live here, and unfortunately the price that some of us have to pay in order to have a land of our own. And it's important to know the individual stories that made life in Israel possible for people like you and I, and when people come visit here, make them feel at home and welcome. And that wouldn't be possible if we didn't have an army to help keep everyone, within our borders and outside of our borders safe.
To me, Yom HaZikaron is a day of truly honoring and respecting all of the efforts and actions that the people of this country and the Jewish nation take to continue to protect our entire heritage and to make this nation a house, a home for all of us, and to maintain that for as long as we can.
When I think of Yom HaZikaron, I think of the bravery of these soldiers who gave up their lives for our people and what they believed in, and it's truly like the ultimate sacrifice for the cause. So.
When I think of Yom HaZikaron, I think of not only the soldiers themselves, but their families, their wives, their families, their kids that they had to leave behind and really sacrifice their everyday life and to go and fight for Israel.
It's such a merit to for these people to serve our country and keep us safe. These people who do these little actions that we don't know that could have changed our lives. It's it's pretty crazy.
My name is Penina. Our maiden name was Weiss. My married name is Peretz, and I'm the eldest of 6 kids. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, where my dad was a rabbi. My brother Ari was the 3rd out of 6. Ari was born in Dallas, Texas in 1980. And in 1992, when Ari was 12, my family made Aliyah to Ra'anana. He was a shy kid. He, when he was younger, he had a few friends. He was great with a basketball. After graduating high school, Ari studied in Tzfat for a year, and then he went into the Palchan unit of Nachal, and he was trained as a sharpshooter in the Army. And Ari really changed. We often say, before Army and in the Army, Ari became very proud of himself. He became more muscular. He really gained a lot of confidence. On September 30th, 2002, it was right after Simchat Torah. Ari hadn't been home for a holiday in over a year. And my grandparents, who were Holocaust survivors, had flown in from the States to be together as a family. And we were all away on Sukkot, and obviously it's a time that everyone will cherish forever and forever. It was the last time that my family was together. And Ari, in September of 2002, Ari was involved in a mission through the Shabak, actually, to help retrieve information from a building that was used as Hamas headquarters in Shechem. And Ari was doing guard duty with his friend Shai, and a sniper from across the alley shot at both Ari and Shai. Shai had fell and was injured, and Ari was shortly after that shot in the shoulder and penetrated to his lungs, and he died almost instantly. And the hole that Ari was shot with is the hole that remains in our hearts every day of our lives. This event shocked not only my family, but the world at large. We're American, Olim Chadashim. We don't think of ourselves as part of that bereaved family organization. This was something that we were very unaware of and not accustomed to, and didn't, and people around us also, they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. Last September was 20 years since Ari was killed, and in some ways it feels like it's been a lifetime, and in some ways it feels like it's just yesterday. But there isn't a day that doesn't go by where I don't think of him. My family, is very open about speaking of him. Every event in our life, every wedding, every birth, every holiday, every Shabbat, we feel his absence. A lot of times after someone passes, people make them out to be this angel, this, subhuman person. And Ari was just a regular guy. He, was goofy. He had, a bunch of goofy friends. He lived for his friends. He had a girlfriend. He had a love for Israel, for life. He was really the pride and joy of our family, to be the first one in the generations before to be able to enlist in the Israeli army. In these past 20 years, I can't even begin to count the numerous acts of good, the prayers that have crossed the lips of thousands of people, the buildings that have been built in his memory. There's a shul in Ra'anana, in the city that my parents live in. The biggest shul in the city is named after Ari, and there are over 1,000 people every Shabbat who pray in that shul. 19 kids that were born and named after my brother. It's beautiful for my parents to see, his legacy is continuing. It's been 20 years, but he is not forgotten at all. He's constantly being remembered and talked about. And when you connect personally to a family who has a story to tell, I think that the day of Yom HaZikaron is a lot more meaningful to you. And in general, when you have someone tangible that you've spoken to or seen pictures of, and you can relate back to that story, I think it becomes different and a lot more relatable.
It's really like when these soldiers go into the army, when these people go into the army, they're literally signing their life, and it's just amazing to think about how they're there to protect our safety and security in our land. So grateful.
What I took away from Ari's story is the amount of chesed, the entire community of chesed that is built upon this unfortunate necessity. We need soldiers, and they need to put their lives on the line, and some of those lives are taken away, unfortunately. But from that sadness also comes the ability for people to truly care about one another on a deeper level, understanding the true risk that people are taking, and the amount of chesed that can be done from one family to another, taking care of each other, because it's not just the soldier that lost his life. Every single one of his family members lost a piece of themselves too, because we're all connected to each other.
When I was watching it, I was thinking like, wow, like Yom HaZikaron is like, a day to memorize fallen soldiers. But when you really look into it and realize this guy had a sister and this guy had a mom and a dad, and it's sad to put yourself in that position. That could be you, that could be your brother, and it's to see the stories of all the people that have actually gone through this that we're memorializing. It's it puts your perspective on you. These people really sacrificed their life for you to be sitting here today.
My name is Debbie Benstein. I'm originally from London. I've been in Israel for 35 years.
My name is Ari Licht. Born in Far Rockaway, New York. My parents made Aliyah when I was 4.5 years old.
And the story that we're here to tell is of my mother's first cousin, who was Ari's uncle.
Leo was born in July 30th, 1928. In Wiesbaden, Germany. Both his parents, my grandparents, and his grandparents, my great-grandparents, were living all in the same house on different floors. And from 1936 to 1938, they moved back to Berlin because Berlin had better education. They were there till 1938, where my grandfather, Leo's father, was deported to Poland. That was the last they saw of him. After that, my grandmother and her two sons, my father and my uncle, traveled through Germany, hiding in different places. And they were hiding in Europe throughout the war until they were able to get into Switzerland in 1944. In 1946, Aliyat al-Noor was recruiting youngsters to come to Israel, and they were giving certificates. My grandmother and father would have wanted to join, but they were denied because my father was too young. My father was about 12 years old. My uncle was eligible. He was already 16. So they gave him a certificate and he moved to Israel. He came on one of the boats to Atlit. From Atlit, he moved into Tel Aviv with some distant cousins. He was working, and then they drafted him, of course. He was drafted into the Chativat Karmeli, a Karmeli unit, and he was fighting in Jenin, which was one of the tougher battles up north. He fell in on the 3rd of June, which is really pretty much the second day of the battle.
Very recently, actually, I've been through all the papers that my mother still has in her house. And I found among those papers 2 letters from Leo Licht that he wrote in those 2 years, between the ages of 16 and 18, when he was in Tel Aviv. He was 16 and on his own, having been through all of that, having lost his father, having, been on the run. And in the letter that he wrote to my grandparents, he says, "Thank you very much for sending me the shaving kit." And I read that, I welled up with tears because he's maybe 17. He was maybe 17 when he wrote that. It may have been his first shaving kit. That was what was important. He was a boy. He was a boy. We're not talking about somebody who had any kind of life experience that was a pleasant one.
My grandmother always shared with us stories about the Holocaust, about her family, about her siblings, and of course about my uncle. It was a ritual that we had every year that on Yom HaZikaron, my grandmother and my father and I, my sister too, would drive up to the cemetery in Afula. It was all about, my uncle, Leo. That was one day a year where it was just him, just him. It was very bonding for us. It was a very sacred ritual going there every year. The most difficult year was probably the year that my father passed away. My father passed away, he was 56. My grandmother was still alive. And the year that my father passed away, the year after my father passed away, it was only my grandmother and I that went up to his grave in Afula. And my grandmother was a very tough woman. She was a very strong woman. Obviously, she survived so much, burying 2 sons. But I remember taking her to the gravesite where he was buried. And she bursted out crying like never before.
I think Yom HaZikaron, for me, the Memorial Day for the Fallen, is about remembering the fallen and feeling blessed and celebrating what it is that we have. It's not just, a list of names. And you can see the effect that this loss from 1948 still has on the family. There is a gap. One person is missing, and from that one person, a whole branch of the family is missing. I have the privilege to be here because of what they decided to do, the decisions they made then. And I think it's very important to go on websites where you can find the stories. Look for the stories, look for the people who you can maybe identify with. You'll see, you can read in the stories about what their backgrounds were like and where they came from and what they did and what happened to them. But start asking questions over and above that. Try and use your imagination to really understand what that might have meant for them. It's not just another story if you start trying to imagine what it was actually like for them.
He made Aliyah after all these bad things that happened to him in his childhood to a country that there was, you know, it was basically all based on hope. Like, I hope this is going to work out for us, because it wasn't even Israel yet. It was still, you know, the state of Palestine. And, you know, I can't even imagine, because I came here making Aliyah through Nefesh B'Nefesh, and I have all these commodities that, like, are amazing here. But, you know, when he came here with nothing growing up to nothing here, and, you know, eventually got killed for this state to be, you know, a country. It's an amazing story, and it's good that, you know, we remember not just the soldiers that have died recently, but we remember all the soldiers who died for this country to exist. And, like, you know, those are the people who really are the backbone to Israel, you know, forming into, like, the nation it is today.
And going from tragedy to tragedy within his childhood, only to not give up in the face of all that, to realize that there can be more to life. And through his sacrifice, he helped make something that we can all appreciate nowadays. We can have all these great opportunities that we have in the land of Israel because of what he fought for, what he believed in, and now we're helping to manifest it.
Even when things get hard and these small, you know, those things that you don't feel like you can't push through, I think of this story and I think of, wow, if he was able to do that, things don't seem as hard in my own personal life.
And I feel like it'd be a really big thing to, you know, find someone who was a fallen soldier, who maybe has no descendants, has no family, and, you know, no one's actually really thinking about them. Even though we're thinking about them in the holiday, no one's individually thinking about them to light a yahrzeit candle, you know, daven in their honor. You know, it'd be a big thing.
Every single day when I'm davening, especially during Shemona Esrei, I'd say, I'm going to try to have not just myself and my family in mind, not just the people that I choose to care about, but the people that I can now, I guess, also choose to include to care about, namely the soldiers as well, the people who are protecting us. And if I can give them a little bit of that protection spiritually with Hashem's help, then I guess that's what I'm going to try to do.
Now, when I've done birthright trips and I've learned more about the soldiers and their service, and went to the cemetery where the soldiers were buried, I've connected a lot more to the day, and hopefully this year I'll be experiencing it in Israel. So it'll be a new experience for me, and I hope to become more connected to the day.
I'm going to take away, like, just a deeper appreciation of Israel and try to hold it on a higher standard for all those that really couldn't experience it, that went through the Holocaust, and all of those that wished and prayed that they could be in a place where they could walk around and not be persecuted and have their kippah on their head and eat at a kosher restaurant at every corner. It's something that I definitely take for granted, and honestly, I'm kind of ashamed that I do, because I feel like I'm taking away from so much that people, like, were fighting for, and so much that people were really just sacrificing everything.